Hello, good morning. You are welcome to The Big Issue, live from our studios here at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. My name is Salom Adunu. Indeed, last week when the purported rejection of the 2022 budget was announced or taken, we knew that this week was going to be pregnant. Indeed, the week has been, and many things have happened since. So after the purported rejection, there was a purported vacation of that decision or a rescission of that decision, and then a purported approval of same. This morning, we want to look at the processes altogether and consider the constitutionality or otherwise of same. Also, we want to consider whether the happenings in Parliament over the course of last week and this week constitutes or, a symptomatic of a Parliament in conflict, or the processes and the ongoings are part of the democratic growth of our dear country, Ghana. These are the issues on our table, and there is time. We will look at the ravaging effect of the Omicron COVID-19 coronavirus, the new variant that has been discovered or reported in the southern part of the African continent, and all the politics about shutting the doors to some countries, etc. Whether indeed that is the way to go, or the world must find a way of more equitably distributing vaccines so everybody in the world gets an equal shot at the vaccines. This is The Big Issue. I'll return, introduce my guest, and then we'll do some more things. But in the meantime, you can join the discussion via our WhatsApp lines, 0549-986-996, 0549-986-996, or 0550-585832, 0550-585832. We're also live on Facebook, and so we'll be streaming live on Facebook. You can get in touch with us on Facebook, drop your comments down, then we'll read them to the rest of the world. My name is again Salom Adunu. I'll return shortly, introduce my guest, and then the program will be airborne. You're welcome back to The Big Issue, and as I mentioned earlier, we are looking at the processes that led to the purported rejection of the budget, the purported rescission, and the purported approval of same, and the constitutionality or otherwise of the processes. We'll also want to look at whether indeed this parliament of ours, what we have called a hung parliament, as we have it now in the events of the last few days, is one symptomatic of a parliament in conflict, or it is part of the democratic growth any country, including Ghana, must go through. My guest this morning, Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, 2nd MP and Deputy Minister for Energy. He was in the thick of affairs as well on the floor of Parliament. Dominic Ayeni, former Deputy Attorney General and also MP for Bolga. And Dr. Rashid Draman, who is Executive Director for the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs, and my good friend and senior, Martin Kpebu, private legal practitioner. These are the four guests we'll be having this morning's discussion with. Gentlemen, you are welcome to the program.
Thank you.
All right. So a lot has happened this week. Some were expected, others were not. Last week there was a walkout. This week there was, should I call it a boycott, because the minority side did not attend Parliament at all, were not present on the floor of Parliament on the Tuesday where the purported rescission and purported approval of the budget statement was made. So let me start off with you, Dr. Rashid Draman, who is the Executive Director of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. But in the meantime, I'm told that I have some inserts ready to play. So let's do that quickly. Let's set the scene properly, and then we can take Dr. Draman's view on the matters as we lay them out. So Parliament has approved a 2022 budget statement and economic policy of government. The majority leader, Chairman Sabonso, earlier raised concerns on the floor of the House about proceedings in Parliament on Friday that culminated in the rejection of the budget. Following the application for the decision taken on the budget last Friday to be declared a nullity, the First Deputy Speaker, sitting in the Speaker's chair, determined that based on the number, procedure and constitution, the rejection of the budget on Friday was null and void. Here are excerpts of the approval and reactions from majority and minority sides of the House on Tuesday's proceedings, which saw the approval of the budget after the subsequent rejection, or after the earlier rejection on Friday.
To move that you, the Honourable Speaker, properly propose for determination the question on the motion moved by the Minister of Finance on behalf of His Excellency the President on Wednesday, November 17, 2021, in respect of the budget statement and economic policy of government for the year ending 31st December 2022. Mr. Speaker, it is clear, as I've already said, that the number that was invoked, the article that was invoked, was insufficient to cover the determination of the question that was proposed for the support or rejection of the budget. And so, Mr. Speaker, I invite you to uphold the motion and indeed, by inference, set aside the impropriety, because, as I've argued, what happened that day is a nullity because it does not meet the test established under Article 104(1). So, Mr. Speaker, I beg to move.
So before I take any decision, I want to confirm that I have a majority of members of Parliament in the chamber. Honourable members, our clerks at tables are saying it's not all ministers who are non-MPs they know. So, in order to avoid a situation where a non-member of Parliament may be counted, may I please request the non-MP ministers to move to the gallery. To the gallery, so that we are not confused with the exception of the finance minister where he's sitting, you can't miss him. Honourable members, for the avoidance of doubt, let me read out the constitutional requirements so that there is no confusion as to who can vote and what numbers are required to take a decision. Article 104(1). Except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the votes of the majority of members present and voting. The vote of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all the members of Parliament present. What it means is that before you take a decision, there must be at least a majority of all members present. With me, we have 138 members. That's a majority. It doesn't mean that all the 138 must vote yes or no. A majority of this 138, their decision will carry the day. So, I'll go ahead and put the question on the motion proposed before us. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Order. The consequence, though, of the unfortunate error is that the putting of the question of the budget statement and the question on the budget statement and the economic policy was done in violation of Article 104(1) of the 1992 Constitution, and therefore void and inconsequential, as the record shows 137 members were in the chamber. Subsequently, the vote and declaration that the budget statement was rejected are also hereby declared to be of no effect. Now that we have the numbers, sufficient numbers to take a decision in the chamber, I'll put the question again. But before that, I'll offer the opportunity to the Finance Minister, if he so wish, to make his concluding remarks. If he so wish to make his concluding remarks, as is the practice.
The big issue in the House is the elephant in the room, which is the e-levy. Mr. Speaker, the e-levy enables us to tackle the three issues of debt sustainability, of infrastructure, and most importantly, of our employment issues. We have 11 million people, youth, and we have, in this budget, introduced the largest ever youth program of 10 billion Ghana cedis to ensure that the entrepreneurial nation that we seek will be achieved, and the issue of indecency of jobs and dignity of our youth working will be a thing of the past, as we speak a common language to move on. But Mr. Speaker, the issue of living standards is a problem that concerns us more than any other person. And we have, therefore, considered the issue of the 1.75% e-levy, in which, Mr. Speaker, we are in discussions with the telcos to scale back to moderate their impact, so that in the end, the impact on the citizenry would be manageable.
Members, the motion that was moved by the Honourable Minister and have been debated is now ready for a decision to be taken. We have already determined that the appropriate numbers are in the chamber, and therefore the House stands ready to take a decision. Now I'll put the question. I'll put the question. All in favor of the House adopting the resolution moved by the Honourable Minister for Finance, say aye. Aye. All against, say no. The ayes have it. The motion, the House has accordingly approved the budget statement for the ensuing year ending 31st December 2022.
The quorum to take a decision is regulated by Article 104(1). The fundamental question is, and I'm still quoting Ajaho, is that the time that the vote was taken, did we have at least half of the honourable members present? It is a constitutional issue which has been captured by Standing Order 1091 of our standing orders. If you go by the results of the head count, and there had been a head count, by adding 67 to 66, we will get 133. Therefore, there is a serious constitutional issue here. So at the time that the votes were taken, this House lacked the legal, in fact, the constitutional capacity to take a decision. I would have thought that our Speaker would have been guided by this President. This quotation by his predecessor Speaker. So I entirely endorse the position taken by the First Honourable, the Honourable First Deputy Speaker, that we do not have the number, constitutionally speaking, to take a decision. Therefore, in respect of this, no decision has been taken. That's the President. So nobody is manufacturing this from anywhere. It has happened before in the 6th Parliament. And there is a record of this. So, compatriots, what we have done is just to recognize the fact that what happened on that day was a complete violation of the Constitution. It cannot stand the test of any constitutional test or even the test of our own standing orders. So, it is the reason why we said that it is a nullity, it is void, and it's of no effect. What we did today is to indeed recognize that something happened. But what happened really was a nullity, an illegality. So what we did today was to reinstate, so to speak, the original motion and have a properly constituted House take a vote on it. And as you have seen, the decision is that we have approved of the motion moved by the minister responsible for finance, who, representing the president, submitted to this House the budget statement and economic policy of the government for the year ending December 31st, 2022.
So Ghanaians should expect that what they have done is also a nullity, to quote them, if we are to respect the provisions of the Constitution. Standing Order 109 is also itself derived from a constitutional provision of Article 104(2), which reads, "The Speaker shall have neither an original nor casting vote." We all know, for purposes of today, that the person presiding and the Speaker for today was the Honorable Joseph Osei-Owusu of Bekwai as Speaker. He has no business counting himself among them, and therefore, as far as we are concerned, today's vote reflected another 137 by those who respect the tenets of the Constitution and the standing orders of the Parliament of Ghana. So for the media, I repeat for your ears again, a deputy speaker or any other member presiding shall not retain his original vote whilst presiding. They chose conveniently to quote Right Honorable Do Ajaho, one of our own, and a proud one, of course. Therefore, what they said by the Honorable Do Ajaho is as relevant for their purposes, because they are not 138 by the words of the Honorable Do Ajaho. They were 137. We don't support the e-levy in its form and character as announced in paragraph 315 and 316 of the budget statement. Our indication to them to revise it to take care of the ordinary people, particularly people who depend on $100 remittances from abroad, even when the ranking member of finance schooled them that not all the remittances go to household. Some of it is for purposes of business, capital. As the Honorable Adongo observed, you don't tax capital. So concessions, I want anybody to show to me where they have approved a budget subject to unknown concessions. The concessions are known only to Minister of Finance and to the Honorable Osechi Mensah Bonsu. Is that how the Parliament of Ghana should work? Is that how Parliament should approve a budget policy and economic policy statement of government?
All right, so that was the minority leader and member of Parliament for Tamale South, the Honorable Haruna Idrisu, speaking on behalf of his colleagues in Parliament after that Tuesday approval of the 2022 budget statement. My guest again are Andrew Mercer, MP for 2nd D, Dr. Dominic Ayene, a former Deputy Attorney General and an MP as well, Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Secretary of the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Listeners and viewers, you are welcome again to our program. You can join our discussion via our WhatsApp lines 0549 986 996. All right. So, Dr. Rashid Rahman, if you are there, help us understand this. I mean, obviously, this is a hung parliament. We've said so many times, and indeed that's what the fact is, because no side has a controlling majority, as it were. Are we appreciating the nuances of a hung parliament, or you think we still have a long way to go into appreciating this?
Thank you very much, Salom, and a very good morning to the honorable members, and then the legal brain in the studio, as well as all your viewers. I think, yes, we are beginning to appreciate, the nuances and the challenges of what is a divided parliament, because I think many people have argued that we shouldn't call this parliament a hung parliament. I mean, even though that is my personal view, however you call it, it's one that is almost equally divided. And at the beginning of the mandate of this parliament, I think some of us have said that if we are not careful, we are going to see a lot of gridlock that will characterize the 4-year mandate of this parliament. And for me, at the time that I was saying this, I was saying that based on some experiences that I have lived. Many years ago, I had the pleasure of working with the Parliament of Malawi, and at the time, we had a very excellent legal brain, professor of law, who became Speaker of Parliament. My very good friend, he was called Right Honorable Louis Chimango. And Louis Chimango had a parliament in his hand. That was almost like what we have here. Equal numbers. No one party had a clear majority as before. And, added to that was the fact that, in Malawi at the time they had the penchant for floor crossing and so on. Brief, at the end of the 4-year mandate, my very good friend Louis Chimango did not achieve very much as Speaker of Parliament as we all expected. So some of us were guided by this. I mean, there are many other examples, but for the sake of time, we saw January 7th, and that was just the tip of the iceberg. And I was hoping that both sides would have taken very, very careful notice of that, particularly also when our president, the Right Honorable Speaker, during the inauguration, emphasized this point that, look, this is what Ghanaians have handed us, and we have to find a way to work together. Working together means a lot of give and take. There is no one party that in our current situation that can stick to legalities and get out of this smiling. There is no one party that can win any legal argument in this. I mean, I leave that to our legal people to comment on. Even if a party wins any legal argument, you would have to come back to the House, and we still have 3 years to go. And you would have to come back to the House and face the other side and then sit down and talk and find a way to get the business of our country going. What we have witnessed in the last week or so is a lot of drama and a lot of drama here on both sides. And a lot of, we see effort in trying to, do equalization. The question that kept running in my head, Selam, was this question: what would have happened if Right Honorable Speaker Babin was in the seat on that Tuesday? What would have happened? Nobody has taken time to ask this question. And I believe maybe we would have seen scenes in Parliament that perhaps would have been worse than what we saw on the morning, the night and the morning of January 7th. I also hear my very good friend, leader, making reference to President and making reference to the ruling by the Right Honorable Speaker of the Sixth Parliament, Right Honorable Dua Jaho. What I don't remember is whether the journalist present asked my very good friend, the leader of the House, what the reaction of the minority then was to that ruling. Did they really accept it to be one that is used to justify a decision today? If not, then I guess there are a lot of questions to answer. There is also, the issue of the First Deputy Speaker himself. Many have said, I've heard members from his opposite side. Some say that, from now onwards, he's an imposter. He can't hold himself as Speaker to replace the Right Honorable Speaker anytime he's not around, and so on and so forth. What my reading of perhaps what he wanted to infer on that day, as was an emphasis on his role first and foremost as an
MP,
the member of Parliament representing the people of the choir, rather than comparing himself to the Right Honorable Speaker Bagbin, who doesn't have any constituency that he represents. But maybe in that process, perhaps the language did not come out clearly, and he misspoke, and that is what is creating all this. But Selim, one more important point that I want to raise before I stop is, the whole issue of this is a budget that we have, a very important policy document, and in fact, indeed, one of the most important policy documents that every parliament in the world discusses and votes on every year. I wonder why, our constitution and the standing orders just simply says simple majority. I'm of the school that thinks that, on matters as important as this, we need to begin to think about, do we need something more than a simple majority? Do we need a 2/3 kind of majority, so that can force the hand of all sides in Parliament at all times to negotiate and see reason in terms of if there are any issues that are being raised by people from on the other side.
But Doc, that's quite an interesting one. So we have a simple majority, yet we don't appear to be having our way clear before us. Now you are suggesting or calling for a 2/3 majority. Wouldn't that unnecessarily drag the government of the day? Wouldn't that frustrate the work of government in passing important documents like the budget, for example? Because you'll have to marshal 2/3, and that's quite a lot. And if you are an opposition that is disruptive, I'm not sure any government will do any work at all.
Well, that's Selim, that's one issue that we have to look at. It couldn't maybe be simply 2/3. It could be something more than just a simple majority. I know when I raised this issue first a few months ago, I got a call from the former Minister of Finance, our former Minister of Finance, Honorable Seth Tekwe, who raised the same issue like you are raising, and said, yes, maybe on certain matters it's important given the way our country, the direction in which our country is headed. But on some other matters, it could frustrate the business of government, as you rightly said.
Recording stopped.
We are dealing with very important matters here. just simple majority sometimes doesn't give citizens what they are looking for. And of course, I mean, if you have a disruptive opposition or minority, I believe that minority would also be mindful of the fact that there are limits to how much disruption that you can cause without bringing the negative consequences on yourself and your brand as a brand that is supposed to be a government in waiting, and a brand that's supposed to be likable. Because if you are seen as continuously being disruptive, you will cause yourself, I mean, you have the counter effect of what you are trying to achieve. And before I finish my introductory remarks, Salom, there's also the issue of I hear Article 109 and so on. Article 104 being quoted. There's also the issue of Article 105. I've heard a lot of people in the minority say that somebody was an imposter in Parliament on the Tuesday when the budget, was the second vote was taken. I have not heard very much from the other side. I mean, my good friend, the Deputy Minister is here. I hope maybe they can try and clear the air. Otherwise, that is also another matter that is pending in terms of all the drama that is still unfolding with the issue of the budget.
Very well, thanks. So I think the matter of the supposed imposter, we'll look at that too and see if indeed there is any merit in that at all. All right, so Honorable Ayeni, you were in Parliament, and you've been in Parliament, I think it's your third term?
That is so.
Okay, this is your third term. So you were in the sixth Parliament where the precedent that Osei Mensah-Bonsu was referring to, came up. Do you remember the reaction of the then minority, at the time? Will you recall? I know you were
I recall. I was in Parliament on that day.
Okay, what was the issue actually?
To be honest with you, I can't remember.
What was the reaction? Yeah.
I remember a number of issues came up for ruling. Okay. Mm-hmm. One was in relation to the First Bank. I remember what did they call it? I've forgotten.
Okay.
But I do remember that a number of rulings were given by the Honorable Joe Ajahu. And of course, the then minority, were not very happy with the rulings. In fact, in one case, that was the one that I was referring to, the First Bank, case. The minority actually accused me of being the one who wrote the ruling for Do Ajahu. So of course they were not very happy with some of the rulings that were given by the Honorable Do Ajahu. Most of the time they thought that these rulings were meant to shore up the position of the then NDC majority.
Okay, I see. So now we are here. So can we say that the budget has been approved, and so a lot of water has gone under the bridge, and so we are making progress, or we still want to reference what happened on Friday or what happened on Tuesday, and seek to, as your side has put it, straighten things? So where are we now?
Where we are is that we are in a gridlock situation, all right? Because you do remember that on Friday, that is the previous Friday, the MPP, together with the Independent, walked. They walked out, and then we, rejected the budget. Now, I need to make something very clear. In terms of decision in Parliament, okay, when it comes to the vote, and nobody raises an issue of quorum, then it means presumptively that the decision is valid. So until somebody is there to raise...
Even if it is contrary to what the Constitution says about the majority...
You see, in terms of parliamentary practice, okay, and in terms of the conventions that we operate with in Parliament, at any point in time when it is decision time, okay, so for instance, when you have... let's say 1/3 of members present for business to commence. After business has commenced, if there is a need to vote, a member can raise the issue of quorum.
Okay.
And it is at that point, yes, it is decision-making time, and it is at that point in time that Mr. Speaker will, ask that the bell be rung for 10 minutes in order to notify members who are around the precincts of Parliament.
They are not in the chamber.
In the chamber, that it is decision time, and therefore they should be in the chamber for a vote to be taken, right? That is how we operate, okay? Now, if a member doesn't raise the issue of quorum, we go ahead, and then the Speaker puts the vote, okay? And we can remember since we came back to the current Parliament, that on about 37 occasions, we have taken decisions without meeting the quorum requirement, and I call it a quorum requirement, the decision numbers requirement of Article 104(1), all right, where we have passed loans, in some cases commercial agreements, tax waivers, and so on, okay? In those situations, the decision is presumptively valid until set aside by a member raising the issue of quorum. All right. So when you have a situation where, for instance, as happened on Friday, that is a week ago, when we rejected the budget, when the Speaker put the question, and people keep referring to the fact that Mr. Speaker asked for a head count. Now, Mr. Speaker did not ask for the head count in respect of the question on the motion. He asked for the head count in respect of the quorum
for decision making, number present.
I want to draw some, two distinctions. You remember that the Honorable Finance Minister came and then sought to, he made a prayer before Mr. Speaker. All right. Now, when he made that prayer, Mr. Speaker wanted to put his prayer to vote. Okay, that is the prayer that he should be
allowed to engage the two sides.
To engage the two sides and so on. So Mr. Speaker wanted to put that one to a vote. And then the majority walked out. Okay, when they did, and then we had to take a decision.
They actually did, and then the issue of division was raised.
Right, and the issue of division was raised. But my point is that when Mr. Speaker asked for a head count, it was in respect of that decision. It was not in respect of the motion. So with the motion for the approval, on that one, Mr. Speaker did not take a head count. He put the question. All right. And then we, voted to reject, the budget. All right. Now, because they were not there, nobody raised the issue of Article 104(1). And therefore, the decision is presumptively valid until set aside by a motion for rescission. Okay? The MPP, when they came back on last Tuesday, and they purported to set aside our decision, they did not come by a motion for rescission of our decision. And that is supposed to be a substantive motion of which notice must be given for 48 hours. All right? And after 48 hours, the motion is debated, right, and voted upon. They did not come by that motion because, first of all, 48 hours, it means they have to wait for 2 days. All right? Secondly, they were not sure they would have the numbers to be able to deal with it, deal with it on Thursday. All right? That is, if they had given notice of the motion on Tuesday, they would have had to wait till Thursday for the debate to take place and for it to be voted upon. And so what they did was to come under Order 50 Rule 1. Now, Order 50 Rule 1 allows a member to raise an issue of public interest, all right? An urgent issue of public interest. And then to seek Mr. Speaker's leave that issue be raised and debated. So, for instance, you have tidal waves. That is an emergency. Many people have been affected. A member wants to call attention of Mr. Speaker and the House to the fact that this has occurred, and therefore there is a need for us to do something as a legislature. All right, that member will then have to come under Order 50 Rule 1 because it is urgent. It's urgent. And okay, so yes, the 48-hour rule will be set aside in order for us to debate that. Now, Order 50 Rule 1 is not meant for the kinds of issues that were raised by the MPP, majority on Friday. Okay, it is meant for the kinds of issues that I have addressed. But because they realized that they could not wait for 48 hours, and they were not too sure of their numbers, they decided to raise the issue of setting aside our decision on the basis that it is an urgent issue of public interest. Okay, that was wrong. It was an abuse of process. But you see, we also came back, and instead of coming on a substantive motion for rescission, we also use the same procedure. My objective view, speaking as a Ghanaian and not as a member of parliament belonging to a political party, is that both sides, our side and their side, we have abused the standing orders. Okay? The reason why the standing orders require that we give notice of a motion and give 48 hours is to enable members to prepare for debate, to research on the substance of the motion. And if it affects any matter that concerns a particular constituency, all right, whether it is the national constituency or it is just my constituency in Bolgatanga East, then I would have an interest in researching the facts and issues before coming, to debate. So if you come by Order 50, Rule 1, you take me by surprise.
Okay.
And, members may not be prepared in order to, to have the debate. So I think that there was an abuse of the process by both sides. We have to accept that fact. Now, where are we? Because these two things have happened, all right? There was a gridlock, and leadership decided that we should set up a team, okay, teams from both sides, for us to see if there's a possibility of, building consensus around the key issues that are outstanding with respect to the budget. All right. Most especially, we have the e-levy. Okay. We have EJAPA, which was, surreptitiously, put into the budget, as part of the appropriations process. Then we have the issue of the tidal waves, which is very, very, very important to us, as a minority. Then we have the Aker Energy agreements, because it was put in the budget as if we have approved it, which is not, the case. So we said, let us have clarity with respect to the language or the status of the Aker agreement. Then also there was a fifth issue. So these are the outstanding issues that we are seeking to see if we can build consensus on. But I have observed from within that part of the problem we have is that at any point in time that we want to build consensus on a national issue, then we have accusations coming either on social media or in mainstream media that people are going to be compromised.
From your members?
Well, sometimes it's from members from our bases, all right? And sometimes it's even being instigated from the top.
The top
as in, let's say, the leadership, or the elite
party.
of parties. I'm not talking about our party in particular. So you have situations where when that, there is a decision that let us sit around the table and judge over this important national issue and find a common ground, all right, on it for the benefit of the people of this country. Because remember, we are the legislature, and the Constitution mandates that we exercise our powers for the welfare of the people of this country. That is what is contained in Article 1 of the Constitution. And so if we want to find common ground, it is not because somebody wants to, go and negotiate for some money for himself or some concession that will benefit him personally or benefit his constituency and so on. In fact, in the case of, a benefit to one's constituency, that is allowable. That is permissible. I can go in and say, look, for me to vote for your deal, all right, I want a district hospital in Bolga East. There is nothing absolutely wrong with that. And I keep saying that, look, let us look at the older democracies. How do they operate? So we had a situation where President Joe Biden brought a $3 trillion infrastructure, bill, all right, proposal. His own moderate conservative Democrats said they would not support him, all right? And he had to negotiate even with his own party senators in order to get their, agreement. And in some cases, people like Senator Manuchin just said they were not going to support it if it will affect businesses in their, senatorial districts. All right. Eventually, between the Republicans, the moderate Democrats, and the White House, they ended up with a much reduced infrastructure, bill. Okay. So democracy is about building consensus on national issues and finding the middle ground. Unfortunately for us in this country, anytime there is the need to, negotiate, then you have people, insinuating. So, for instance, if you have a person like, and I'm going to mention him specifically because I took exception to what he did. If you have a person like Gabi Ochiridako, who we know is very, very, powerful within the MPP as a party, and within this government in particular, going on social media, Twitter and Facebook, and tweeting, or writing on Facebook that it is because Parliament is insisting that the budget of Parliament should be raised from 5.2, from 520 million, Ghana cedis to 1.2 billion. That is why there is a stalemate. We are insisting that we want more money. There is nothing absolutely wrong with Parliament wanting more money. If we think that our programs are going to be underfunded, and that will affect our performance negatively, there is nothing wrong with the speaker.
But is that factual?
No, I wasn't part of the meeting, so I cannot confirm. But this is what was tweeted out by Gabi Ochiridako. And then if you went and looked at the comments, people were insulting Mr. Speaker, and kind of insinuating that it is because he wants more money to go and treat himself in Dubai. That is why he's asking for more money for Parliament. But that is not it. I remember distinctly when last year the budget of the judiciary was cut. Okay, Salom, I was one of those who strongly advocated that we should not cut the budget of the judiciary because it undermines their independence, as the third arm of government. All right, so the point I'm making is that we are at a stage where we are building consensus. Ghanaians on both sides of the political divide should understand that this is normal in a democracy, and that until we are able to build consensus around certain national issues, okay, we cannot move forward as a country. As Dr. Dramani put it, okay, where you have a gridlock of the kind that we are witnessing now, there is no winner, okay, in the process. All of us lose because currently, let's say, there's this thing going around that by January we will not be able to fund, government, services. The public services will run to, a stalemate, even though that is not true. Because if you look at Article 180 of the Constitution, it is very clear that there can be a vote on account. Yes. That is, expenditure in advance of appropriation can take place. So we can look at the critical public services and say that, look, we are giving you 12 billion Ghana cedis. You take that for a period of 3 months, all right, and that can, fund those critical government services whilst we, judge to see whether or not we can find some agreement. And in fact, our taxes will still continue to be paid. You will not default in paying taxes on your salary just because the budget appropriations bill has not yet been passed. You will continue to pay your taxes. So government will continue to earn money. But in order to spend that money, they need parliamentary approval. And that is why we can do a vote on account for them to do, to continue to service the country until such a time that we reach agreement and pass the Appropriations Act. So this has been a very roundabout way of answering, but I thought that it was necessary to lay the context, to put everything in context for us to see where we are. Very well. But I think that it is important that as we negotiate, okay, between the minority and the majority sides in Parliament, our basis should take note that you can't go into a negotiation and come out with your position intact.
You appear to be so concerned about that view that your bases hold, that anytime there is such a controversial issue, you guys go into a meeting, you come back and your positions change. And by that, they interpret same to mean that things have exchanged hands. You appear to be very concerned about that.
I am very concerned.
But because they say that in earlier decisions, like the approval of the ministers, for example, there were people, the basis, and a lot of people thought should not go through. Yes. I mean, 3 or 4 names were opposed to at the committee level.
Yes.
It was brought to the plenary, and the votes were taken, only for some of these people to even have more votes than others. And it raised a lot of concern from your basis. So based on that, once bitten, twice shy, they feel that any time a controversial issue comes up, you are called into a meeting, things happen, and then you betray their trust. Is that not a valid point?
Salom, very, very fantastic, question. They are right in saying that they were beaten once and they have to be shy twice. Okay, but it is also because in doing this, we don't carry people along. All right. Now, I gave you the example of the United States, infrastructure bill. In that process, there was transparency. Anytime President Biden called the Republicans to the White House.
So why, instead of being so concerned about the grassroots, your basis, why wouldn't you focus on bringing greater transparency to that process? Because with this parliament, we will need a lot of that consensus building. Why wouldn't you focus your energies as members of parliament, rather, who are concerned about this, on improving transparency of that process? But hold your thoughts. I'll take a quick break.
Thank you. Okay.
When I take the break, I'll come back to Japan Mess. I'll hear from him, and I'll let Martin Pebu give us an analysis of what he makes of what the two sides have been up to. So this is The Big Issue, live from our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. My guest, Martin Pebu, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Dr. Dominic Ayeni, who you just heard, and Andrew Mercer, who is waiting to speak on the matter. My name is Selom Adonu. We'll take a quick break, return, and hear the other side of the debate.
It's inspiration. It's the word. The teachings.
When is your time? When is your season? When is your turn? No amount of lies, no amount of liars, political liars, financial liars, family liars, hatred or spiritual liars, no amount of it can stop you.
Tune in to Voice of Inspiration with Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. on City TV.
City TV is live on DSTV. Go to channel 363. On GoTV, access City TV on channel 182. On a digital TV, please press the menu button on the remote control and run a news search on your TV. Take note that without an antenna, you cannot access City TV on your television. City TV can be accessed on a free-to-air digital box like the GoTV and StarTimes box. City TV, it's your world.
It's inspiration. It's the word. The teachings.
When is your time? When is your season? When is your turn? No amount of lies, no amount of liars, political liars, financial liars, family liars, hatred or spiritual liars, no amount of it can stop you.
Tune in to Voice of Inspiration with Archbishop Nicholas Duncan Williams every Sunday at 6:30 p.m. on City TV.
We are changing the situation on December 24, 2021 with the biggest outdoor party in Accra. The Situation Outdoor Party, the throwback edition. This year, we threw it all the way back with a blast from the past. Let's jam to the nostalgic songs from back in the day. Come have fun in the safest environment with great mixes from Ghana's finest DJs. Not your regular DJ, DJ Mingle, and DJ JJ. Amazing cocktails, drinks, and delicious food, and exhilarating performances from the maestro, Mr. All For Real, Ofurian Ponsa, and the 16 years crooner, Miss Bell, Ghana rap software, Bravo, and many more. The Situation Outdoor Party Throwback Edition is the party for this situation. Make your Christmas Eve come alive. This will be another one to remember. On Friday 24th, 2021, venue will be the Gazebo View near Alcid Academy, Joel, Accra. The time is 7 p.m. Dress code, it's an all-white affair. For table booking, kindly call 0205-973-973 or 0558-973-973. Book your table and make reservations now. Media partners, Ghana Weekend and City FM. This is powered by City TV.
It's your last chance. Tell it the party is on. Sweetie, let's dance. Hold my hand. It's your last chance.
You're welcome back to The Big Issue. We are live from our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. Very big welcome to our TV audience or viewers. The discussion is started. We're looking at the events of the past few days in Parliament, the rejection, rescission, approval of the 2022 budget and the issues of constitutionality or otherwise that have come up. We will also be looking at whether this is a parliament in conflict and or it's part of the growing democracy's maybe trajectory. And we are hoping to have your views on the matters that we are discussing on 0549-986-996. That's our WhatsApp line, 0549-986-996 or 0550-585832. My guests are Dr. Dominic Ayeni, who's a former Deputy Attorney General and Member of Parliament for Bogatanga East, Martin Kpebu, who is a private legal practitioner, Andrew Mercer, who is a Deputy Minister for Energy and MP for Sekendi, and Dr. Rashid Draman, Executive Director for the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. So, Mr. Mercer, Honorable Mercer, you've heard your colleague, Dr. Ayeni. He's laid out their side of the issue, at least for now. You've heard Dr. Rashid Draman express what he feels about the issues. Indeed, in his submission, Dr. Ayeni felt that both sides abused the processes. I don't know what you think. I want you to answer the fact of or his position on the abuse of the processes and tell us where we stand now in respect of the budget, whether the budget as it is what we are moving with, or as the majority or minority thought or determined was rejected. Where do we stand now so we move the process forward?
Well, let me say good morning to your good self, our cherished listeners and viewers, because I'm sure we are on City Radio as well. Of course, my colleague panelists, particularly my professor, Dominic Ayini, who taught me at the law faculty, and my very good friend, Martin, and of course, Dr. Rahman as well. Yes. You see, it's important that we look at these issues in a proper perspective, because otherwise then we'll get to miss the point completely. Just to answer your question directly, before I even proceed to proffer some explanations with respect to what my views are. The budget has not been rejected, was not rejected, as was being indicated by our friends in the NDC. Indeed, on Tuesday, the budget was duly approved in accordance with law, and that is the budget that we're going to work with. Like Dr. Ayini said, we are all hopeful that the committee that has been set up by both sides would be able to work together to ensure that all the outstanding issues are resolved so that we make progress. Then again, Dr. Ayini made the point that pursuant to Article 180, Parliament can make some appropriation on account just so that the government, business of government can run for the first quarter of next year. Indeed, if you look at the provision, that prerogative does not lie with Parliament. It has to, of necessity, come from His Excellency the President, who has duly presented a budget for consideration, and that budget has been duly approved. And so it is only when it becomes clear to him that the appropriation bill cannot be passed before end of year that he may elect, in those circumstances, to bring some application to Parliament for some expenditure in the advance of appropriation to be made for K1. And for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, if I may read, Article 180 provides that where it appears to the President, not Parliament, that's the Appropriation Act in respect of any financial year, will not come into operation by the beginning of that financial year. He may, with the prior approval of Parliament by resolution, authorize a withdrawal of monies from the consolidated fund for purposes of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on the services of the government in respect of the period expiring 3 months from the beginning of the financial year or on the coming into operation of the Act, whichever is earlier. And so that initiative is not one that Parliament can pick and choose expenditure that it deems important and then go ahead to approve for the executive to expend. That expenditure in advance of appropriation ought of necessity, if the President deems it necessary, to then initiate that bill. And so that was just to clarify that. Then again, Dr. Ayini makes the point that we abuse the process. I don't think we abuse the process at all. If there's anyone who abused the process in the run-up to the events of last week, it clearly is that of the NDC, not the MPP. He makes the point that we should have come by motion, which then would have required a 48-hour time frame before our motion is moved. And that because we didn't have that luxury of time. That's why we came by under 50. But Dr. Ayini will agree with me that many a time motions are tabled and we waive the 48-hour rule and proceed to make a determination on the motion that very day. And so if indeed we deemed it proper to come by motion, we could have gone by motion on the Tuesday and moved for an abridgment of time and taken that motion on that day. What we said to ourselves was that that act that had taken place on Friday in itself was illegal, was unconstitutional, it was null and void ab initio, and so clearly there was no need for us to table a motion to rescind that decision formally, okay? Because that in itself would have amounted to our admitting the validity of that act that had been occasioned on the Friday. And so that was why we went by the motion, the application which had the prior approval of the Speaker pursuant to Order 50 to proceed on that route. And so that really is what the MPP position was. You see, Selon.
But before that, that was a decision of Parliament, no matter how you look at it. So you didn't think it was proper to set it aside by coming via the proper processes. A decision was taken, there was a substantive speaker sitting, and the decision you deemed null and void was taken anyway, and I'm sure it will be captured by the records. You didn't think it was proper to come by the proper or appropriate channel to have that decision set aside as you deemed fit?
Of course, under 50 is an appropriate forum to move.
I think technology is failing us. Japan Mesa line is acting up. I hope. Okay, I think it's back. So yes. So Honorable, I think we lost you. We lost you briefly. Hello, Honorable Mesa. I think your line.
I was relating to.
Okay. Okay. Good.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Go ahead. I think we're having. Maybe we'll have to reconnect with you so we hear your point quite clearly. In the meantime, let me speak to Martin Pebu, who is on the fringes or is on the fence. Let's hear what he thinks about it. So a lot of parliamentary politics, a lot of standing orders and relevant articles to Parliament, being thrown about here and there. We'll soon get into the issue of numbers. Mm-hmm. But so far, I mean, hearing from everybody and everything that's happened outside of the studio, I mean, from last week till now, what really are your impressions and what's your thinking?
Oh, okay. So to be clear, you said we'll go into the analysis.
Yes.
So for now,
so after this, the next round, we'll get into the numbers and everything.
Yeah. Okay. So my general comments are that, number one, I'm extremely shocked at the e-levy. Extremely shocked at it. I mean, because this is a government that came on the back of from taxation to production. When the previous administration was...
But when they were making that comment, we didn't have COVID, and a lot has been said about the COVID economy. We need money.
That's not enough. That's not enough at all. It's such a shame that after shouting to the highest heavens, we have the men, we can do everything, Mahama should get out. They will show how the government is run. Then you end up with this sham. I mean, this is the apogee of incompetence. Yeah, because you look at the e-levy at such an astronomical rate, and you're like, what? A baby, when it's born, will have to sit, learn how to crawl before it walks. But you come in with, boom, 1.75%. And you're like, crazy. Is that possible? I mean, so it looks so ridiculous that, look, I think the best thing they have to do is that, look, they just have to reduce it. Yeah, initially it was so many people and many Ghanaians, I see millions are still saying no at all, right? Yes, but, sometimes for the good of our country, now that we've seen that there isn't really much money around, okay, so sometimes we have to double tax ourselves because in actual fact, this e-levy amounts to double taxation, triple taxation, quadruple taxation, and so on and so forth, right? But once we are broke as a country, maybe we can do middle of the road and bring it in at a low rate, far lower, maybe somewhere around the 0.5%.
0.5.
Yes, but the key thing is that it's shocking that after making so much noise, we're hopeful. Yes, I voted for the president, the city president, with so much alacrity because we had been promised that they have the men. They know how to do it. They know well. And Mama was so incompetent. I didn't know that the word incompetent could still be used even when they come into office. I mean, at 1.75%, it's a mockery. I'm like, oh, these guys have lost touch. If you lost total touch, because, Salam, ask yourself, so after you've been paid your salary, they decide to put it on Momo. So the salary that you've paid tax on, you're using that salary on Momo to do other stuff. And then now, they're taking tax on it. It's so ridiculous. It's so ridiculous because that same money, if you choose not to put it on the Momo, but you would work and pay, I mean, that's go to the service provider and pay fiscal cash. There's no tax. But as long as you want to route it through the Momo, then you should pay tax. It's not the same regime that's come, the e-economy or electronic. Let's do an electronic economy. Let's stop holding so much cash. We want to do a cashless economy and all that. So you see that we are eating back on the other policies just on the back of the e-levy. So it looks very ridiculous. I think it's good they've set up the committee. They shouldn't have dug in their heels. They should have seen from day one that, look, this e-levy is no respecter of party colors. I have seen people who are MPP, and yet they are totally against this levy. Okay? Yeah, so you shouldn't have just presumed that, oh, Ghanaians will go for it. No. What's the production tied to this e-levy? What's the production tied to this e-levy? There's almost none. What's the production? After saying that we are going from taxation to production, now you turn it on its head and rather go back to taxation. Yeah? No, so it makes it very, it's such a sham. It's such a sham. And they shouldn't have allowed it to fester to this stage. It should have just been clear to them from day one that they couldn't come in at such a high rate. It's not worth it. You see, sometimes when you dig in your heels and you allow citizens to complain and complain so much before you do the needful, you would have eroded all your goodwill. You see, you always have to be strategic. Listen, you calculate well. I can't believe that the government could have thought that they can bring in 1.75 and it will go in without a fight. But it looks very naive. I'm like, I'm not a politician, but from my little interaction with Ghanaians, okay, yeah, not a partisan one, of course, but to the extent that I take part in this debate, somebody say radio politicians, right? Yes, I accept, because we take part. But, looking at the way people are suffering, the masses are suffering, it's inconceivable that you can bring in 1.75 and Ghanaians will keep quiet. No. Or maybe if they also thought that we'll just make a bit of noise and keep quiet, then that one too, they've miscalculated wrongly. So that also reinforces the point that they've lost touch. They've lost touch, absolutely. And that's how come it's good that Bernard Mona and co want to go and do the Occupy Parliament. Maybe this is Salon. We should have asked you to play back Occupy Flagstaff House. When Ofuriata and co went there, finance minister, what were the things they said? The economy was being badly run, all those things. You come and take charge, and then you're doing the same things that you accuse your predecessor. Maybe if it's not late, ask your people to look for the Occupy Flagstaff House. He was interviewed. Yes, you see it on social media.
With a few other people.
Yes, you hear all the things he said. You see how his words have come back to haunt him. Yes, so next time when you are talking about somebody, you be careful. Because he said it free. Maybe he didn't anticipate that someday he'll be in charge. Now see, the same sham that the incompetence he accused somebody of, he's even doing worse at it. Right? Yeah, so the second point, as I said, is that it also shows that they just haven't planned well. Listen, they should have done a lot more consultations. You don't have the numbers in Parliament. So when you don't have the numbers in Parliament, it behoves on you to do more consultation, more engagement. But if you just think, we would come in and just push it down the throats of Ghanaians, that's a total miscalculation. Totally. So as citizens, Salon, we should be ready to go support Bernard Mona and co. Okay? Yes, when they occupy Parliament, so that they will force Parliament to do the right thing. This e-levy cannot go in its current form. It can't.
There are some concessions we hear they are making, but we'll get to Mesa to tell us a bit of what the concessions
it's come late.
Really are. But it's better late than never, man.
Yes, but next time.
All right, so Honorable Mesa, I understand you are back on the line loud and clear. So you were making a point. You are addressing the Order 51 procedure. So if you can take it up from there.
Yes, sorry for the bad connection. I was indicating that Order 50 in itself is a motion, okay, that can be tabled properly for a matter of urgent public interest to be considered by Parliament. And that's the route that we opted to take. It cannot be the case that, like I said, Order 80 in itself allows for the waiver of the 48-hour period that my good friend Dr. Aini made reference to, for motions that require 48-hour waiting period, if you like, to be tabled that very day. And that in itself makes whatever decision that is taken pursuant to that legitimate. You see, as we went on the break and I came back home, I heard my friend Martin making comments that are pretty unsavory. Why do I say so? I mean, I take the view that we can make comments, disagree without the name calling. In any event,
what exactly did he say that you think was unsavory?
I'm coming there. In any event, it was not only one factor of the economic mismanagement of the Mahama era that was used as basis to campaign against the removal of his government from office. Okay, all the economic indicators we are aware were not looking well. Indeed, the economy had been mismanaged, said that we had to go to the IMF for a bailout. And so the totality of all the issues that were confronting us at the time led to the call for his removal and for a new government to be put in place. If you do not understand a particular tax measure that is being introduced, it's important that you look at it dispassionately before you make conclusions that really exposes your ignorance on the subject matter. How do you suggest that by reason of the fact that the e-levy is being imposed in itself amounts to double taxation? Salom, you take your salaries at the end of the month, you pay personal income tax on them. If you go to the restaurant to go and buy food, are you not charged VAT? Does that amount to double taxation? Now, I want to know, does the tax on your already taxed income for services that you procure amount to double taxation? Yet listen to him. Look, we are in a particular situation that we find ourselves in as a country. Government borrowed excessively in the period of the COVID. It's a matter of fact. To save lives and livelihoods. We are coming
I think we are still having some challenges.
Out of COVID, we are confronted with, we ought to look internally to raise some. Hello? Salom, am I on?
Yes, you are breaking up a bit, but go ahead. I think you are on now.
Right. And so government has come and made a proposal that, look, we've looked at the broad spectrum of options that are available to us. Yes, we're embarking on a digitalization agenda. We are synchronizing all our ID systems with existing data. We are harmonizing our national addressing systems. We are harmonizing our tax identification numbers. All that is intended to bring a lot more people into the tax net. That process hasn't been completed. But we need to raise revenue to fund our development expenditure now. And so we've identified this electronic transactions that has increased with investment by government over time, to the point that a lot of people use it for payment of goods and services that in themselves are not in the tax bracket. So can we post the revocation of the 17.5 VAT on financial transactions that the NDC imposed, apply a 1.75 levy, which is a reduction of 15.75%, to ensure that a lot more people who are in the informal sector are then brought into the tax net. But whilst doing so, exempt the 40% or so of Ghanaians who are in a vulnerable situation, who do not use more than 100 Ghana cedis per year, cumulatively amounting to 3,000 Ghana cedis per month. That is the policy. Yet you hear people make comments that it was not well thought through. What does that mean? And in any event, what does it mean to say that some engagement ought to have taken place? Government should have mounted some referendum to solicit views before it implements this policy. Let's be real. If we are making political statements, okay, let's not hide behind the cloak of we not being partisan. Everybody knows the position
I think,
the views
Honorable Mensah, I think that is not really that's below the belt, if I should say. We know Martin, but we know the kinds of things he does.
What is below the belt?
No, we know comments here to say is hiding behind the cloak of non-partisanship to make a comment that is partisan. I don't think it's appropriate.
Hiding behind a non-partisan cloak or otherwise. No, how is that below the belt?
No, Honorable, you are saying this in specific reference to Martin Pebu, and you know it as well as I do that is not how he operates. The fact that he has said this today, that does not sit well with you, does not qualify you to make that sweeping statement.
Is Bernard Monda not engaged in a political activity?
No, I thought you were speaking
in particular. Not engaged in a partisan political activity?
Wait, Bernard Monda is a partisan person.
Is he not?
No, he's a partisan. I thought you were speaking in specific reference to Martin Pebu.
That he is asking people to go and support. He's not engaged in a partisan political activity.
All right, you make your point.
Not engaged in a party political activity.
No, you make your point.
So when I remit money to my grandmother, what production is that for? When you mentioned the taxation, when I remit my grandmother, what production is that?
I think we'll come to the concessions.
Come on.
But now let's move into the root of the difficulty itself. So on Friday, we had 137 persons voting to reject a budget. Your point is that the 137 fell short of the constitutional requirement, and so on Tuesday, your side, through the processes as well, even though Dr. Ayeni says both of you abused the processes, you disagreed, went through the process, got the budget approved. Now, the point is that the Deputy Speaker of Parliament, who counted himself as a member of Parliament, and so making the number in the House meet that constitutional threshold, that counting is being challenged by the minority. They claim or they say that by virtue of his ascension to the seat or the role of Speaker, it disabled him from being counted as a member of Parliament for the purposes of decision making in the House. And so, as far as they are concerned, it was still 137 people in the House. What are your thoughts on this, just to steer the program? Honorable Mensah, yes,
I disagree vehemently with that articulation by the minority, because the provisions of Article 104 are clear. In any event, it is not the case that the first Deputy Speaker participated in the vote on Tuesday.
No, we are not talking about vote. We are talking about being counted as in the number present in Parliament, which brought it to 138. Without him, it would have been 137.
Salom, are you aware that this provision, are you aware? Hold on. But he's a member of Parliament. This provision does not, speak to the absence or otherwise of the Speaker. It presupposes that in the event that the Speaker is presiding, or in the event that parliamentary business is being conducted, or that a decision is put before Parliament, 138 at least of members of Parliament ought to be present. Is Honorable Joe Osei-Wusu a member of Parliament or not? Was Honorable Joe Osei-Wusu present on the day or not? If you answer these two questions in the affirmative, that he was in Parliament and that he's a member of Parliament, what is your issue? When you preside, you do not participate in the vote. But when you preside, it doesn't take away your membership of Parliament. And so when you are counting for purposes of determining the members of Parliament who are present, it is members of Parliament so-called. And so let no one confuse anyone that because he was sitting in the chair, he lost automatically his membership of Parliament for purposes of counting. Because if you make that suggestion that you are telling the people of Ghana, indeed the people of Bekwai, that they did not have a representation in Parliament on the day. Those who elected to stay out have their constituents to answer to. Honorable Joe Osewusu, for purposes of Article 104, did not breach any rule. And let anyone show me a counter provision in the Constitution that says otherwise. I've heard people suggest that the exception that commences Article 104 should be related to Article 102 quorum. I'm saying that that is a misreading of the Constitution, because that exception relates to situations where the vote in the chamber is required to be more than half. And so, for example, in Article 82, when you are censuring a minister of state, the Constitution provides that you must have 2/3 of members of Parliament voting. For example, in Article 2913, when you are amending an unentrenched provision in the Constitution, you require more than 2/3 to take a decision. In respect of Article 104, it is clear, and for the benefit of our viewers and listeners, if I may read, except as otherwise provided in this Constitution, matters in Parliament shall be determined by the vote of the majority of members present and voting, with at least half of all members of Parliament present. What is the rationale for this provision? It seeks to safeguard the situation where only a few people or a few members of Parliament can go into the chamber and take decisions that bind the whole house. And so the Constitution, in order to ensure that that situation does not arise, mandates that before a question is put, you must have at least half of all members present, and that a majority of that half who are present then can take a decision. And that's exactly what took place on Tuesday. And so those who are making interpretations that is not in accord with the constitutional provisions should properly be guided.
So I think the other point that has come up is that the deputy speaker position, it's a post and it's a privilege. And in many matters like this, you know, once there are rights and privileges, there are times that other rights and privileges are taken away as well by operation of that particular, the operations of that particular role. So by ascending to the role of speaker, he was disabled momentarily from being a member of parliament for the purposes of presiding over the business of the house.
So my simple response is that he was disabled from participating in the vote, but he was not disabled as a member of parliament. Indeed, our standing orders are clear that in the absence of the speaker, the first deputy speaker and the second deputy speaker, any member of parliament can be selected to preside. Are you suggesting that at any point that you are selected to preside over proceedings in the house, you are entitled to some privileges? Have you looked at the succession? Is the first and second deputy speakers part of the succession in our country? So let us not confuse the issues. They are clear, they are unambiguous. The first deputy speaker, the second deputy speakers are members of parliament who have been selected to assist the speaker in his absence to ensure that the business of the house does not grind to a halt. At the point that they are presiding, they do not have an original vote, yes, but for purposes of counting the members of parliament who are in the chamber at every time, those two individuals, if they are in the chair, are deemed to be members of parliament and are required to be counted. Indeed, on Friday, but for the fact that the speaker himself is not a member of parliament.
I think Honorable Mensah's line is off again. Yes, I think you are back. Yes, so go ahead. Go ahead.
I don't know whether it is.
Yes, so yes, I think Honorable Mensah is breaking again. But I think he's made his point, though I had a question to put to him. But I'll do that when he gets back.
Or not.
Okay,
Some comments that is on his Facebook page. I don't know whether it's official. And
no, we hear it's a fake comment. Or we hear it wasn't official.
Hello?
We hear that comment on his Facebook is not official. All right. Technology is not
very well. If it's fake, then I'll not speak to it because clearly.
So my question to you before I will say. Yes, my question before I bring in Dr. Ayeni on this matter is that so on that Tuesday, when the Honorable Joe Osei-Owusu was going to Parliament, in what capacity was he going? Was he going there as somebody going to sit in the Speaker's chair, or he was going there as an MP?
He was going there as a member of Parliament because it was when we sat. He was going there as a member of Parliament who also was the first deputy speaker duly elected, by Parliament from among members of Parliament to assist the Speaker.
Very well. So let me speak to Dr. Ayeni now. So Dr. Ayeni, I think so. This is the bone of contention, really, and this is what is dividing everybody.
Yes.
So on the day, Honorable Joe Osei-Owusu is a member of Parliament. That is correct.
Yes.
He is a first deputy speaker of Parliament. That is correct.
Yeah.
So for the purposes of counting the number of MPs in the House on the day, does he not qualify to be counted as an MP present in the House on the day?
It's very interesting that the Honorable Andrew Ejapa-Mensah is struggling to defend the indefensible. The reason is simple.
I'm not sure he will agree with that.
No,
that's
I
fine.
mean, yeah, but I'm entitled to my view.
Sure,
I think that this is a very indefensible position. And the reason is very simple. On that day, before the Honorable Joe Osei-Owusu, the first deputy speaker, took the chair, the clerk of Parliament announced that in the absence of Mr. Speaker, the first deputy speaker shall act, and that he shall assume, in the words of the clerk, the powers, the privileges, all right, and the rights of Mr. Speaker. That was announced.
Okay.
Now, if a member is supposed to preside, what we do is that we elect one of our own to preside.
But has that happened before?
No,
Okay.
I have not seen it happen, since I've been in Parliament.
Okay.
So if a member is presiding, we will elect one person to preside. But if you are exercising powers conferred on you by the Constitution and the standing orders, that's a different matter altogether. You assume the powers, rights, responsibilities, and privileges of Mr. Speaker. So that day, when he was announced as assuming the rights, responsibilities, and privileges of Mr. Speaker, all right, he ceased to be an ordinary member of Parliament.
But he was a member of Parliament, that he wasn't ordinary.
He is a member of Parliament, all right. Now, Salom, why do you think that in the wisdom of the drafters of the Constitution, his original vote is taken from him? The original vote that I have is exercisable pursuant to my being elected member of Parliament for Bolga East. In other words, I exercise that, I cast that vote anytime we are taking a decision on behalf of the people of Bolga East. So if the people of Bekwai elected him and they accorded him the right to vote, to cast the original vote, and the Constitution says no, when you are sitting as Mr. Speaker, all right, and it comes to decision, you lose your original vote. In other words, you no longer can represent the people of Bekwai as far as that decision is concerned.
Okay, but we are talking about presence.
Yes, and so I'm coming to that. All right. Now, the absurdity of the situation in which we find ourselves is that we are being told that when it comes to the vote, though his original vote has been, taken away by the Constitution, he can be counted for purposes of meeting the preconditions for voting. Okay?
The preconditions mean being present.
Being present. Because the Constitution says present and voting. It did not say present or voting. So it's not disjunctive. Okay? So those present...
But voting is not compulsory.
No, it is not compulsory. But you see, those who have abstained will also be counted as having abstained. Okay. So it is not the case that we are dealing with a situation where, people can say, okay, I don't want to vote, and then that is the end of the matter. All right. So our position is that once he was deprived of his original vote and he was presiding, okay, then he could not have been counted for purposes of meeting the precondition for decision. Okay. So, and that's why in the course of the debate we kept emphasizing that Article 102 deals with the quorum for the conduct of ordinary business of Parliament. All right. So if you have 1/3 of the members of Parliament present at any particular point in time, quorum has been formed. But whilst conducting the ordinary business of Parliament, when it comes to decision, then Article 104.1 kicks in. And it is in 104.1 that the requirement of at least half of the members of Parliament being present is, the Honorable Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, made the point that it is to prevent a situation where just a small number of people in the chamber take decisions on behalf of the majority. And so it says at least half the members of Parliament, shall be present. All right. Now, the absurdity is, even clearer when you take 102 into account. 102 says that except the member presiding. For purposes of quorum. So, if, for instance, currently we have 92 people, 92 people, including Joe Osewusu, in Parliament, all right, we would not have formed a quorum. The reason is because 102 says that except the member presiding. So there will be 91 members for purposes of determining whether 1/3 of the members of Parliament are present. Right? So why doesn't he insist that for purposes of 102, he is also a member for Bakwe, and therefore he can be counted for purposes of determining whether or not we have met the threshold in 102.
He's saying that the two should not be read together. 102, 104 should not be read together.
But you see, the Constitution must be read as a whole. And we are here taking a decision. We are looking at the two quorum provisions. They are similar. They deal with the same subject matter. You cannot read them in isolation of each other. Okay, one builds upon the other. So, for instance, if we go into chambers, and then it is clear that we have 93 members present. All right, we can go on with business. We are going to approve a government loan, right? And 93 people are present. Then we say we have quorum. Then it comes to the vote. Mr. Speaker puts the vote, and there is a voice vote, and he says the ayes have it. And I say, no, Mr. Speaker, we haven't met the threshold requirement in Article 104. What am I referring to? I'm referring to the quorum in Article 104, which then deals with the issue of voting decision making. All right. Mr. Speaker will then have to ring the bell so that members will be alerted that it is time for decision. And if they come and they are 138, 139, 140, we can go ahead and then take a vote on the government loan that is before us. If, for instance, we then, if I did not raise the issue of the quorum, the 93 people can actually go ahead and approve that government loan. Except if someone then comes by a motion for rescission to say that we were 93 instead of 138 or 139. All right. Selom, the reason why I'm taking time to explain these provisions is that they are interrelated. And if you have been deprived of your original vote, you cannot be counted for purposes of meeting the preconditions for taking a decision. That is the point that we'll be making all along. And so, and then the whole idea that, what we did was unconstitutional and so on. Of course, Martin Kpebu is here. Martin Kpebu Esquire is here. That is not for Parliament to determine, right? We cannot pronounce on the constitutionality or otherwise of. We can invoke the Constitution in our debates, but the finality with which pronouncement is being made that what we did was unconstitutional, it is null and void and of no effect and so on. It's a bit worrying, even though I don't support any resort to the Supreme Court on this matter, because I think that, as was stated in Tufo and Attorney General, all right, what happens in Parliament is a closed book, because decision making in Parliament cannot be, the subject matter of, adjudication by the courts, because at the end of the day, what you are now seeking to do is that the courts can actually overturn the decisions, if they are, this. So
here's the case: we are not building consensus. We are not agreeing on a thing. So the arbiter must then come in to tell us where it falls really, especially once it's a constitutional matter.
Yes, I understand that. But the principle of law is that Parliament is a master of its own rules. Yeah. We are currently struggling with interpretation of 102, 104, etc. And luckily, we are recrafting our standing orders. I think that clarity must be brought to bear on whether or not the first deputy speaker, when he is presiding, okay, is still a member. In fact, the previous standing orders, made that provision. Okay, the first deputy speaker
had a vote.
Had a vote. All right, but then we saw it fit in the 1992 Constitution, and then our current standing order to say that he does not have a vote. All right, so we have to clarify whether, if he doesn't have a vote, can he be counted for purposes of determining the quorum under Article 1041? That is for us to determine. And luckily, we have draft standing orders, which my committee, the subsidiary legislation committee, we have reviewed them. I think that we should insert a provision that settles this matter, instead of resorting to the Supreme Court, because parliamentary decisions are by majority. We are, the political, arm of government. It will be difficult for us to have a situation where the Supreme Court settles the matter, and then, at some point in time, we as the politicians will have to now struggle with how to implement it. I think we should be left to do it by our own standing orders.
Okay. All right. So let me take a few messages, then I'll bring in the two neutrals, as I want to call them. Zalix Duane in London says, if you are not a speaker, you have absolutely no business presiding over the House. Simple. It's egregious, he says. Moses says, good morning, City. If the first deputy speaker counted himself present but not voting, does that mean that it was 137 members voting yes and one which is him voting either yes or no? The Constitution is saying those who are voting should be half on the present, half and be present and voting, but not on those present but not voting. Not quite clear, but please, our parliamentarians should always revise their notice well and deliver the right verdict than being partisan. Babamu Tamale says, the conduct of our MPs, most especially the minority in the August House, is gradually becoming unbecoming and a disgrace to the entirety of Ghanaians. Dr. Aini is one of the personality I respect so much. So that's a good one there for you, Doctor. So we'll take a quick break, return and hear Dr. Rashid on this, and hear Dr. Martin Kpebu Esquire on this as well. Then we can move to the next leg of the discussion. Don't go away. You're welcome back to The Big Issue. Your messages are coming in thick and fast. I'll take time to read quite a number of them. The discussion is getting heated as well. We've heard from the politicians still haggling over 102, 104, and whether the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament indeed could have or should have counted himself as being present in the House, or he lost that precondition to voting, being his presence in the chamber as MP. Honorable Mensah obviously thinks that he remained a member of Parliament, and for the purposes of counting and presence, he had to be counted. As expected, Dr. Ayini of the NDC disagrees. He feels that you cannot be disqualified from voting but be counted as a precondition, because the presence is the precondition, and once you've lost the voting right, you lose the precondition as well. Interesting. Let's go to somebody who's been dealing with Parliament, Dr. Rashid Draman. I know you've heard this argument many times, but I don't know really where you stand on this. Do you think that the first Deputy Speaker should have counted himself as MP, or he should not have done so? What are your thoughts?
Salom.
Yes.
Before Dr. Draman comes in,
okay.
I would wish for my Professor Dr. Ayini to address us on the 1093.
109?
Yes.
Okay. On the 109, what was it? Okay.
A deputy speaker or any other member presiding.
You know what? Just hold it. I'll make you make that prayer in 2 minutes. Okay. You'll make that prayer to your professor in 2 minutes. Let's hear Dr. Rashid. Okay. He just stepped out. So let's hear Dr. Rashid. When he comes, I'll let you make that prayer.
Yeah, Salom. The more I hear the two honorable members, this matter, the more I think that we need a lot of conversation to go on between the two sides. Because as I said earlier, I am not too sure that, any of them can win this, on the legal front. And even if it becomes the case, end of the day, you would have to come back and sit down and deal with your colleagues on the other side. What we are hearing between the two of them, I think, is symptomatic of the character of this parliament. That we've seen a lot of disagreements, challenges to the rulings of the speaker, a deputy speaker being very bold enough to overturn what his boss has done, and so on. This wouldn't have been possible in the 6th Parliament, in the 7th Parliament, and so on. It only leaves the executive smiling. The executive is the only winner in this, because if we have a parliament that is divided and arguing amongst itself, I am not too sure whether we can expect the kind of accountability role and oversight role that the parliament has to perform over the executive. Now, in terms of your question, maybe my answer to your question would be to look at how some of our neighbors and some countries on the continent have taken steps to cure this problem. I believe that in crafting their standing orders and in thinking about this, they were ahead of us. If you go to some of the Francophone countries, some of our neighbors, for instance, everybody is a member of parliament, the speaker and all his deputies. And for the purposes of presence, whenever the business of the house is going to start, I've sat in some parliaments where, I hear them take a roll call. They take a roll call to make sure that, they determine the number of people who are present in order to say yes or no, there's a quorum, and to avoid all the confusion. Even the right honorable speaker, those parliaments, responds whenever his name is called, in order to say, yes, I am present and I'm part of the people who need to be counted. So I say all this to say that, Dr. Ine has made a point that currently our standing orders are being revised. I think we need to borrow some good practice in order to bring some clarity, because I believe a lot of this is going to be seen in this 8th Parliament. And we don't even know what's going to happen in the 9th Parliament, whether Ghanaians are going to hand over to the country a parliament that is more divided than this one. So, two things. First, I think the issue of consensus, I know we are going to come to that subsequently. But most importantly, I think we need to look at our standing orders. That is where Parliament has a lot of control. I don't want to go to the Constitution in order to give some clarity so that we can avoid this happening in the future.
So if I'm getting you right, learning from what happens, just around us, our neighbors, where the Speaker is a member of Parliament, and as you said, when Parliament is about to commence, they count the numbers. I mean, they take an attendance register of a kind. The Speaker presiding is called, and he shows that he's present. By that analogy, you are suggesting, though not expressly, that the Deputy Speaker in this case ought to have been counted because he was present. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, if our standing orders permit it, and that's where there's an argument, including bringing in the Constitution. But like I said, in those jurisdictions, not only the Speaker, all his deputies are members of Parliament, and they are counted, and they answer when their names are being called in order to establish whether there's a quorum or not.
I see.
But our system is not like that, and now Article standing order 109 and so on is being quoted. I mean, I hear Honorable Mesa was going to talk about 1093.
Okay, so that's the standing orders. I thought he was referring to the Constitution. All right, so just have you concluded so that he makes his prayer now?
Yes, I have on this matter.
Okay, well, good.
We need some learning.
From other places, other parliaments around us. That's good. All right, so Honorable Mesa, you were making a prayer or a request of your professor, you call him, Dr. Ayeni. I mean, he briefly stepped out. So he's now here. Let's hear you. You wanted him to help you appreciate a certain provision in the standing orders.
Yeah, sure. You see, I was asking him to, in his submission, address us on what the import of Order 1093 is. Okay, because if you look at the entirety of the provisions in Order 109, 1, 2, and 3, it only speaks to the Deputy Speaker or any member presiding not retaining his original vote while presiding. Is it then suggesting that in the event that there is a tie, as opposed to in a situation where the Speaker hasn't got a casting nor original vote, the second Deputy Speaker has a casting vote in the circumstances where there is a tie? Because that's what 109 seems to suggest.
Yeah. All right, so let's hear him. Let's hear him. Then we go to
Honorable Mesa. On that aspect, I think first of all, the right to vote is provided for explicitly by law. You cannot infer the right to vote from a statute, from the absence of language, to that effect. So you can't say that he will. I mean, by reason of 1093, all right. That standing order, yes,
vote makes it.
Okay, the fact that he's been prohibited from exercising the original vote then means that impliedly he has a casting vote
because it was not stated.
Because it's not stated. All right. However, if we want to, we look at 102. I think 102.4. If I may use your constitution. I 102.4. Okay. No. It's not 1024.
So this is the big issue.
Yes.
Whilst he finds it, we are coming to you live from our studios at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop.
Yes,
it's actually messages. All right.
Yes,
okay,
it's actually 104 3, where the votes on any motion are equal. It shall be taken to have been lost.
Lost, yes.
All right. Now, in other constitutional documents that I've seen, okay. So, for instance, in the United States, okay, where there's a tie in the Senate, it is the vice president's vote that breaks the tie. So it is expressly provided for that vote is cast in order to break the tie. In our case, the constitution makers did not contemplate, giving any person a tie-breaking vote, the casting vote. That is why they say where there is equality of votes, the motion is deemed to have been lost. So in the context 104.3, okay, makes the reading of our standing order 109.3 to mean that you cannot retain the casting vote.
So what in essence it means, if I'm understanding you, is that when the first deputy speaker is presiding, because when the votes are equal, it is lost, we don't have even any room for the exercise of a casting vote.
That's
very well. So, Honorable Mesa, there you have it. So I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
You see,
that the constitution is supreme, and the constitution trumps the standing orders.
Absolutely. Of course, the point that I was making was very deliberate. Okay, because whereas
All right, so Honorable Mesa is up again. The gods of technology are not friendly to us today. Honorable Mesa, so maybe we'll have to come back to you. So let's go to Martin Pebu to help us appreciate his thinking on 102, 104, and the relevant provisions of the standing orders he has read in relation to the numbers, whether the deputy speaker was right to have counted himself as being present or not. Esquire.
Okay. Yeah, so Salom, I think we'll start from the question of whether the deputy speaker was right to have counted himself. Okay. Having reflected on the constitution and the standing orders, I think my definite answer is that he was wrong. He was wrong to have counted himself. Let's go to the constitution. Even before then, let's start with the standing orders. Under Order 7, the standing orders define Speaker or Mr. Speaker includes a member presiding at a sitting. Speaker or Mr. Speaker includes a member presiding at a sitting. So it means that once the honorable member, that's Honorable Osewusu, took the seat as the member presiding, he was Mr. Speaker. And the Constitution makes it clear in Article 102 that the Speaker shall not be counted as part of the quorum. So let's read for emphasis. I know Dr. Ayine has already referred to it, but so that I'll also be here to have expressed my independent views. Let's go through the motions. It says, Article 102, it says, a quorum of Parliament, apart from the person presiding, shall be 1/3 of all the members of Parliament. You say, yes. So, to conduct business, you need a quorum of 1/3. And it says that don't add the person. And so you see what it even says. It says that apart from the person presiding. So whether you are the original Mr. Speaker or even the deputies acting, they shouldn't count you and as a member or any other member. Yes, in the event that the deputies are
so even if that member is presiding, he's Mr. Speaker, so he shouldn't be counted.
For business. It shouldn't count you for business. And so if they shouldn't count you for business, it will be incongruous to now suggest that under Article 104, when they are about to vote
and make a decision,
such a person should be counted. No. And I've heard people say that, oh, then what will the people of Bekwai do? Does that mean that they were not represented? No, they are represented. But this is the constitution we've chosen for ourselves, where the constitution has made provisions that in such events, when any member, so it's not as if the constitution is discriminating against the people of Bekwai. No, it just happens that coincidentally, their MP is the first deputy speaker. So if people are now up in arms that who represents the people of Bekwai, then with due respect, I also raise that. So now who represents the people of SAR? Okay? Santro Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi.
But is that not a different kettle of fish?
No, it's the same thing. If it matters that much, right now you see that we've taken it to the back burner that the people of SAR, Santro Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi, they don't have an MP. And yet that one, it doesn't matter. Yet, until this matter came up, we thought that, oh, in a democracy, once in a while, such a thing will happen that for a period, some people are not represented. But it doesn't mean that means the democracy has failed. So how would the people of Santro Kofi, Akpafu, Lolobi feel? If we are now saying that, hey, for one decision, the people of Bekwai were not represented, so the democracy is failed. At all costs, they should be represented. You see the argument? We're going to cause trouble. Look, let's look elsewhere. I'm sure we've heard of the phrase, no taxation without representation. If you go to the American history, okay, you see D.C., Washington, D.C., they have a population of over 700,000 people. Yet, they don't have a senator. Okay, in Congress, they are not there. So you go to D.C., there are number plates. You often see, as your dog schooled in the U.S., so you see, no taxation without representation. The number plates that the cars in D.C., that's what they use. Reminding the government and the people of America all the time that, look, we don't have representation in Congress. Yet, isn't the U.S. touted as one of the strongest democracies in the world? Yet the people of D.C., even the capital, can you imagine, the capital of the U.S., they have no representation in Congress. No taxation without representation. So that's something they are constantly working on to see if it can be resolved. And of course, it didn't start with DC. That phrase, no taxation without representation, starts from the time the British were colonizing America.
Americans.
Yes. So that time they imposed taxation, and yet the Americans didn't have a say in the British Parliament. Okay? So that's how they agitated, and then eventually, of course, they got their independence from the Americans and all that. Okay? So the point I'm making is that it's not as if at every point in time, all the rights are kept intact. For the sake of the whole, once in a while, you suffer a bit of diminution in your rights. Don't we have it in chapter 5 that the rights that we have, they are subject to issues of national security, public interest, and all that. Yeah, so once in a while, even in Parliament, this thing will happen, that for a moment, the people of Bekwai cannot get that vote. But that is why we agreed. That is part of the democracy. You see, that is part of it. So for me, it's clear that from what is stated in Article 102, and because we read the Constitution as a whole, we don't read it in bits and pieces. It's clear that once 102 says that the person presiding is not counted when we are checking the quorum, it influences 104. So in 104, Mr. Osei-Wusu had no locus to count himself as being part of the quorum. If Mr. Osei-Wusu thought that it is so important that he must vote, he must be part of the quorum, his remedy would have been that, okay, you know what, let's suspend the business. Let's wait for the speaker to come back from his medical leave. Then when he assumes the chair, then this business can be conducted. After all, you heard Dr. Ayine refer earlier on that, look, in the event that this budget is not passed, there can be vote on account under Article 180.
Which Honorable Mesa also contributed to encourage.
Excellent.
That it must come from the president, which obviously is the case here.
Yes, so what is the rush? If we say that at all costs the people of Bekwai had to have their representation, that Honorable Joe Osewusu should not be taken as not representing the people, then the remedy would have been that, honorable members, to the extent that the people of Bekwai expect that I should be part of this decision making, please, let's defer. Mr. Speaker will come in no time, and when he's in the chair, we can deal with this business. But to the extent that they all thought it wasn't necessary, they could go on, then we had to do that small sacrifice. So for me, it's clear that the rescission and the approval of the budget were null and void.
Rescission, but the rejection, in your view, stands?
Yeah, the rejection stands, absolutely.
Even though we did not have the required number in the House to make such a decision?
Well, that number, the reason it stands is this. On Friday the 26th, right? Mm-hmm. The majority were in the House. They were conducting business. Then when they saw that they were going to lose, that's how come they walked out. The Constitution cannot be allowed to aid fraud. When you see a vote is going to go against you, then you walk out to stultify the Constitution. No, the business must continue. Once there's evidence that they signed in 274, then we are about to conduct a certain business and then you walk out. Please, the business continues because there was quorum at the start. So
I thought the issue had to do with the point in time where the question was put and the number present in the House at the time.
For me, I still go with the interpretation that once you had the number from the start, it will go on. You see that the ruling, the Do Ajawu ruling, the Speaker is not bound. Bagbin is not bound. Because I had difficulty with the Do Ajawu ruling, and no wonder Speaker Babin didn't feel bound by it and went on. Even in the Supreme Court, they don't depart from their previous decisions. So that's the law, the democracy we've chosen for ourselves. And the rule of law, yes, if you want to depart, you depart.
I see.
So it's the same thing in Parliament. So I presume Speaker Babin didn't feel bound. That is how come he went on. So the rejection stands absolutely.
But maybe that's in. I don't know whether that will be in theory, because I understand there's been committee meetings supposed to consider the specific portions of the budget, etc., which means that we are gradually moving on.
Yes.
And so maybe your point will just be in theory, but in practice, the approval has been done.
No, so this is what will happen. So in practice, it also rains. That's how I'm making the point. And I'm sure if you were to go out for Vox Pop, you hear citizens saying, no, for them, they recognize the rejection, right? So it's good now they've constituted a committee to, sit down and negotiate. That was what they were supposed to do from the beginning, rather than trying to railroad it through. You say, that was what they were supposed to do.
Let's jump into the second part of the discussion, which is also related to the first, whether it's a parliament in conflict or it's a growing democracy, etc. There were a number of issues that your side raised, about 5 or so: the e-levy, the 15% or so increases in public sector services, the ACA energy matter, the JAPA, and then KETA. But in terms of the JAPA, is it not a fact that Parliament considered and passed it, and that it was only stalled because the finance minister or the president also asked that once special prosecutor has to look at it, let's hold on till he does or he finishes looking at it. But the fact remains that it was passed in Parliament. So do you have to bring it back to Parliament? Is that the practice?
Well, yes, you are right, Selom, that EJAPA was passed. It was passed over the protestations of the minority. Okay,
like it was passed because
we worked out, on it. But the interesting thing is that I don't know whether if we went back to the votes and proceedings of that day, at the time that we walked out, the question is whether they had 137 people to be able to take the decision on EJAPA or 138 to take a decision. But we are not challenging it as unconstitutional because we think that presumptively, if we were not there to raise an issue of quorum pursuant to 1041. So definitely, I will agree with you that it was approved. But of course, it was approved and there was an uproar. Civil society groups did their own analysis. Imani Ghana, and so on and so forth. They made representations to the government, and then, of course, when the special prosecutor did his analysis and submitted a report, he, took the view that there were issues with respect to Ejapa that bordered on, corruption, and therefore the president listened and said he was putting it on the back burner for now. All right. So they could do two things: say that, look, we are going back to just pick it from the shelves, duster it, and go ahead, because Parliament has approved. So the constitutionality or otherwise of that approval can then, cannot be questioned at this point in time. But from a political point of view, it will be difficult for the government to take that decision. All right. And the government will be, subject to accusations of deceiving the people and just shelving it for a while and taking it, and running with it. So that is why they decided to bring it back to Parliament, because the finance minister promised the country that at some point in time, Ejapa will come back to Parliament in one form or the other. Of course, it will be a modified form. But you see, the way they put it in the budget, I don't know whether they wanted us to approve the expected proceeds from Ejapa to be passed as part of the appropriations, right? Which would then mean that as the inflows from government, when you are looking at the revenue side, we'll be looking at Ejapa proceeds as part of revenue for government. All right. But then the structure and form of the Ejapa agreement itself would then, I don't know whether that would have followed after appropriations. Because definitely, if we put it in at the appropriation bill and pass it, then it will be legitimate for them to go ahead and implement it in the form that they have now, put it in. But I think definitely they would bring, if we were to pass the Appropriations Act, they would still bring Ejapa for us to be able to approve it, because it has to meet the International Economic Agreement, provisions. Okay, so that is what I think is happening. Now we need to wait and see what the move of the government is. All right. So
in building consensus, we understand a 20-member bipartisan committee is being set up, and I think we've referred to it variously as a committee. So 20 members, that's quite a large number. 20 politicians over very controversial issues. That will be a mini chamber for debates, etc. I don't know if you're a member of that committee, but how is that committee working, and what are we expected to see from that? Are we making progress?
We haven't had a report from our side of the committee yet. Usually, when that committee of that nature is set up, we would expect that our leadership will come to us as the minority caucus and report on what is happening. So we are waiting. We have a caucus meeting next week, and I'm sure that they will report to us on that. But in terms of the size, the reason that the size was expanded that way is because, you have leadership, all right, and then you have the front bench, then the middle bench, and then the back bench. Okay, so the idea was to have representation from all these segments of the benches. Okay, so that in the middle bench, you have senior members there. You have backbenchers also there, so that when the backbenchers come, they will deal with their colleagues and try to explain to their colleagues how they arrived at those decisions that have been taken and so on. So I think that is how come that we have such a large number. But I don't think 20 members from each side is too big a number for purposes of negotiations. Okay,
very well. So where do we go from here? So, for example, the Honourable Minority Leader, Haruna Idrisu, was speaking somewhere, and it says he was ready to accept a 1% e-levy, because the e-levy appears to be the most critical matter in all these brouhaha. He is ready to accept 1%. Then we have a message or a press statement from the office of the Chief Whip that the position still remains that the NDC is against the e-levy. So it appears that these are two leaders And for purposes of the budget and all that is going on, the minority in Parliament is so crucial for your members and for the general public than anything else. I mean, than the general NDC group. So for your leader, who is so important, to be saying that he's ready to accept 1%, that could be taken to represent the view of the minority. Now we have Chief Whip coming to say, no, the position still remains that we are totally against it. How should we approach it? What should we be saying? Which one should we accept?
Salom, I think most of the time it is the way the media reports statements made by politicians that can cause a lot of confusion.
Really?
Because, yes, and I'll say this. I don't think that my leader, the minority leader, Honorable Haruna Idrisu, was wrong in indicating, signaling that, yes, we are in a negotiation. And nobody goes into a negotiation coming out with the same position. All right? Of course, if we went in and managed to convince the MPP that they should withdraw the e-levy, okay, that will be an excellent, achievement on our part. But we do know, and it has been indicated by ministers of, the current government, that the only way out of the e-levy is to go to the IMF. And for political reasons, they don't want to go to the IMF. Why go to the IMF and take $1 billion, which is the equivalent when you can raise the same 1 million, and a little over $1 billion from the e-levy very easily. Okay, despite all its inefficiencies and so on, as Mr. Martin Kwebu pointed out, the fact that even in terms of scope, we are not too sure what is being taxed, and so on and so forth. So I don't think that the minority leader was wrong in giving an indication of the fact that, yes, if it comes to the crunch and we have to walk away with something,
be the unified position of the side. No. To avoid this situation
until you have achieved a definitive position within the negotiations. The signaling is very important. And I think basically what the Honorable Minority Leader was doing was signaling. But then it then brought about some backlash from our base and from people generally, Ghanaians who are against the tax, in saying that the minority is about to sell out because he has indicated that he's willing, or his side is willing to take 1%. No. That is why the Chief Whip came out to say, look, our position is still that we want the e-levy withdrawn. Okay? There is no contradiction there, because whilst you are negotiating, you can signal that, okay, if it comes, if push comes to shove, we will be at 1%, right? But I know from all the information that and intelligence I have gathered from the MPP side, that they are not ready to come down to 1%. That for as far as the e-levy is concerned, they are saying that for every 0.25 concession they make, they lose 1 billion. Okay, so even if they were to take 1.5, percent,
that's 1 billion. So if it comes 1%, that's 3 billion.
Yes, they would have lost 3 billion out of the 6.9 billion projected. So they'll be left with 3.9 billion. Okay, that is if all the economists will say all things being equal. All right, but of course you can if we put in this tax, as Martin was saying, it's most likely that people will now carry cash to go and do transactions.
But we've not addressed the issue of convenience. Yes. So, for example, if I have to travel somewhere to go buy food, maybe 20 cedis worth of food,
right?
So 1.75 will be about how much? 2 cedis, yes, give and take. The cost of traveling to the place and the cost of time, etc.
Yeah.
Though it will be painful, I will still have to endure paying this. So I wouldn't say because of that, I'll put money in my pocket, spend the time, walk all the way to the place to buy the thing. Even though there will be charges of delivery, etc. But the convenience and the time I will not waste will force me to go by that, even though it will be painful. You don't agree?
Oh,
so
yeah,
I think they know that.
Those are some of the variables that we need to take into account in coming to a decision whether or not this is, a very good thing to do or not from an economic point of view. Okay, so Yes, convenience is, I mean, for instance, if you are to go to Techiman to buy, yams, all right, from Bolga, all right, you the risk of carrying 15,000 and being robbed in the, on the way, is something you need to take into account. Instead of putting, you buy Momo, you send the 15,000 to the seller, they organize the goods and send it to you. So all those are factors that we need to take into account.
Okay. All right, Honorable Mensah, the consensus building, it appears your side is not ready to back down on the e-levy charge. What can you give to this consensus building process? It appears we are not touching the e-levy. Honorable Mensah?
Doesn't look like it.
It's Honorable Mensah on the line.
Yes, Salam, I'm here.
Yes. So did you hear my question? Well, what are you willing to give? It appears you don't want to touch the 1.75 at all, which really is the major sticking point in all these debate and discussion.
But that's an unfair statement to make, because no firm communication to that effect has been issued by the Finance Ministry. In any event, look, Doctor would agree with me. And I say so conscious of the processes that Parliament itself goes through before laws are passed. A bill to that effect would have to come to Parliament, which would indicate the rate, the proposed rate, and the commencement date. We as members of Parliament can input into that. So are we not embarking really on an exercise of, to borrow the words of Kwekubaku, premature ejaculation? Be only for the political optics of it. Are we not? Do we have to necessarily hoodwink the approval of the budget on a bill that has not yet been submitted purely because the policy proposal is for a charge of 1.75? So, look, all this shenanigans that is going on, right? No. Oh, yes, exactly what it is.
Do not take that from you.
Will you want to use?
What do you call shenanigans? Honorable, come on.
In the spirit of consensus building, Honorable. In the spirit of consensus building, can you use a better word?
But I'm saying that.
Can you use a better word?
He says he has.
I'm saying that.
Okay.
You see, Dr. Yini knows that post the approval of the policy, a bill will come, which will be subject to the interrogation of the Finance Committee and subsequently to plenary. So what's really the issue? If that 1.75 is so offensive that out of every 1,000 Ghana cedi transaction or 100 cedi transaction, government is laying 1 cedi 75 pesos, and it's even exempting up to 100 Ghana cedi per day, cumulatively 3,000 Ghana cedi per month. It's so offensive. Can't we put up our objections when the bill is submitted to Parliament? But look at the fury that this thing has generated. Purely, in my view, and I'm entitled to my view as well, for a headline and no more. That's what the NDC wanted.
No.
But Doc, you express your view. I'm entitled to mine as well.
Yeah.
Because if I look at the legislative process, I fail to see how the bill itself has not been submitted, but this will become an issue. Because it's a non-issue at this point at all. The fact that we approve the principles, the policy, does not in itself constitute an approval to the finance minister to go and do as he pleases. And these are the facts.
Very well. I know you were heavily involved in...
But you see, Martin, today, it's unfortunate you are making...
No, but the fact that Martin's views today do not align with yours shouldn't mean that you should...
How do you suggest that, assuming that the majority employed a strategy that is in accord with law to work out, agreement without necessarily admitting. How do you suggest that amounts to fraud?
But it's the constitution that makes it clear that look, this is the
precisely my point.
You sign it.
You see,
so if you work out,
Martin, with all due respect, don't misread the provisions of the Constitution.
No.
I
think you should tone down. You should tone down. Don't stress everything one is relax. The world is not coming to an end.
Let's make this point.
Solomon.
Go ahead.
The attendance register can contain all members of parliament. If we get to the point of decision making and people for some reason, including attendance committees, are not in the chamber, the speaker cannot necessarily proceed because, according to you, because he has 274 members listed for the day. Please, let's otherwise, why the need, and Dr. Aini referred to it, why the need for ringing the bell?
I think we've moved from that discussion now.
So we haven't, because
we are into consensus building now.
No, of course, we'll build a consensus. And I'm happy to build consensus. And I'm saying to you that Parliament, 90% of our business on a day-by-day basis is carried through in a consensus manner. Yeah, there's only a few controversial matters that get to the public domain that generates public conflict. Yes. And so we'll continue to engage.
Yeah, so on the issues, so you've addressed
e-levy. Let it not be said, and this is a matter of public record, let it not be said that by reason of the majority walking out on the day in protest to the acts and omissions of the speaker in asking the finance minister to leave, amounts to a fraud, and that the vote that was taken, that Dr. Aini himself admits was somewhat an abuse of the process. It doesn't respect of the vote.
It wasn't respect of the vote. It was in respect of etc.
I told you to relax. Stressing everything.
All right, so address us on the Ejapa. What are we doing about the Ejapa? Are we going to bring it back to Parliament, or because it's been passed already, we're going with it that way?
I'm really surprised that the NDC raised it as an issue. Because admittedly, that transaction has been approved by the Parliament of the Republic of Ghana. Fact. The resubmission in itself, which was indicated in the budget for information that, look, consistent with the character of His Excellency the President, who then said that because of the objections that have followed the approval of the transaction by Parliament, I have directed the finance minister to halt the proceedings or the processes leading to consummation of the transaction, reevaluate it and submit it to Parliament. That document is going to come in 2023 or in the course of 2022. You say, no, take it out. So if the finance minister takes it out, are you not then saying to him that he can proceed under the approval that has been given by Parliament already? But like I said, that's the nature of the man Akufo-Addo, Excellency the President, that I'm standing by my commitment to the people of Ghana to resubmit these transaction documents back to Parliament for consideration. And so it will come. And I will urge them to reevaluate the position that they take, because the suggestion that the Japan should be taken out of the budget presupposes that, well, we don't have a problem with the President's directive for the finance minister to resubmit, and that you can proceed to do as has been approved by Parliament. No. Precisely. Because that's the import of their demand. But I'm saying that and indeed, when the finance minister made his statement on the Tuesday, he expressed these sentiments that yes, we can look at it, but it was only for information to tell you that yes, Japan has not been consummated as has been approved, but consistent with the President's directive, I'm going to bring it back. And that he further stated that he has not even considered the revenue from that potential transaction into the revenue for the year. And so it does not affect the appropriations at all.
Wow.
Yes.
All right.
These were the words of the finance minister. And the answer will bear me out.
I
now,
see.
on the issue of, I listed a few other items that they made issues out of. Tidal waves. You see, many parts of this country have needs. Many parts of this country have life-threatening needs. But the matter of fact is that we do not have all the resources to deal with all those issues at the same time. And so because Volta region is your stronghold,
no, Honorable, I don't think so. There are three constituencies. Honorable, there are three constituencies affected by the tidal waves, and lives are in danger. In fact, this actually was a force majeure.
I empathize. Let me be.
Yes, but to equate this to ordinary challenges in other parts of the country, that is unfortunate.
I empathize with the affected persons in that part of Ghana.
Yes, but you can't equate that to any of the normal challenges any part of the country has.
Wait, please. With all due respect, don't make it seem as if to say I am, as it were, not concerned about the plight of the people in Keta and its environs. Not at all. Okay? People in the north, where Dr. Ini comes from, every time the Bagri Dam is built, they suffer. Has he ever demanded that if a provision is not made in the budget to deal with that issue, he's not going to approve it? Has he ever?
But the issue of the Bagri Dam is it not different from the issue of the tidal waves?
Hold on. Look, but it's all a natural disaster somewhat.
One can be anticipated. The other one, no.
No, hold on. Look, the fact that the timing, okay, of the Kita incident coincides with the reading of the budget doesn't derogate from the importance of all the issues. That's the point that I'm making. But nobody has held governments in the past to ransom if it is not purely for political ends. That's the point that I'm making, and I'm standing by it.
All right. So I think we need to drink chilled water.
Please, with respect.
Take a cup of water. And I'll come back to you.
Particularly when it had been indicated by the Works and Housing Minister and the Finance Minister had indicated that, look, there's a contingency vote in the budget that I'm prepared to allocate a portion for engineering works to commence in the Keta situation. So what really is the issue? How do we then make that a precondition for the approval of a government policy, economic policy, and approval of budget statement for the year 2022? Please, I'm not under any way belittling the importance of that to the people who reside there. But it's the politics that the NDC is playing with that I want to draw attention to.
Very well. I think your point is well made. Your point is well made, Honorable Mensah. Let me take a few messages. We'll take a quick break, come back and listen to Dr. Rashid Rahman and Martin Pebu. Then we'll do a few seconds each on the COVID-19 new variant, Omicron. All right. Good morning, Salom. It's good to... Okay. All right. So this is from Edmond from Laboni. It says to solve these issues going forward, the Speaker and the two Deputy Speakers should not be members of Parliament. Okay, no, this is Francis from Accra. Good morning to you all. I think the question here is, if the Deputy Speaker says it's not the Speaker, then what authority does he have to rescind the decision made on Friday by a Speaker himself? What kind of argument is this? You say it's quite unfortunate. That's Isaac in Takrady. This one says, good morning, Salom. The gentleman, that is Martin Pebu, has spoken very finely, clearly and understandably. He has given his opinion as well as used the law and constitution to explain the situation. He has clearly showed the flaw in Joe Wise's actions and deeds. Has in fact showed the sly and callous intentions of the majority. The rescission and approval of the budget is null and void. I wonder if Honorable Babin's on Babin's return, the issue will resurface. This one says the MPP are now being academic and sticking to the rules, but rather they are not being academic and sticking to the rules, but rather trying to use bully boy tactics to bulldoze their way. This one says Article 102 and 104 are clearly distinguishable. 102 places emphasis on the person presiding. The distinction is that whereas Article 102, the framers of the Constitution deliberately mentioned the person presiding for purposes of quorum for conducting business. In 104, the framers of the Constitution deliberately omitted mentioning the person presiding for purposes of quorum. Mind you, voting is not compulsory. That is Julius Afedi from Somanya. Nis Saban says, on the matter of the annulment of the Asin-North MP, I personally think that the EC has caused financial loss to the state and the commission must be held accountable, because before you admit one's details onto the ballot box, you must... okay, so this is quite on a different matter. A number of them. So let me take a quick break. I will return, take Dr. Rashid Rahman's view and Martin Kwebu's view on this matter. Of course, I doubt if we will resolve the matter on the show today. So ours is to throw up the issue so that you at home and wherever will be the decision makers in this. The big issue, will be right back. All right, so you're welcome back to The Big Issue. We are live from our studio here at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. My guest, Andrew Ejapa Mesa, MP for Second and Deputy Energy Minister, Dr. Dominic Ayeni, former Deputy AG and MP for Bolga East, Martin Kwebu Esquire, private legal practitioner, Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director, African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. All right, Doc, so let me come back to whilst we wrap up on this segment of the program. Consensus building, etc. A lot has been said about what the parties, the two sides, now the two groups in Parliament should be doing. Who really should be leading the charge in the consensus building? Is it the side, which the executive side, the executive party side, or it should just be organic? How should it be, and what should we be doing?
Salam, thank you very much. Maybe before I come to the issue of consensus building, let me first address maybe some of the issues that, just one or two from the Honorable Deputy Minister about, the minorities' position on some of the issues, and the fact that, all the issues are just for headlines. I think I agree. Maybe the Keta issue could be characterized as such. But when it comes to the e-levy, I am not too sure whether I want to agree with the Honorable Deputy Minister. I don't know whether maybe by now the government or the MPP has done some very quick survey to take the pulse of Ghanaians. I am sure if you go out on the streets and then you talk to 10 people, I am very sure that you are going to get a majority of them having some concerns about this issue of the e-levy. So I just wanted to put it out there. Maybe for their own purposes, it's very important to try to take the pulse of Ghanaians, because I think this is, if a policy is a bad one in the eyes of Ghanaians, I think many people are going to have it behind their minds when they assess the performance of this government, and particularly when they are in the polling booth. So it's very important, I think, for them to take cognizance of that. Now, let me come to the issue of consensus building. Who should take charge? I think Parliament has taken the first step in terms of setting up this 20-member committee, which, Selam, you described as perhaps maybe being very big. And Dr. Ine has explained the rationale behind the numbers and so on. I think that's a very good step. That's a very kind of step that would permit the two sides to save face, because look, we can keep dragging and arguing about these legalities. We are not going to get out of that anytime soon, but there has to be a kind of mechanism through which both sides can save face and sit down and say, look, let's talk the interests of this country. So that initiative has already been taken by Parliament. There are a number of other kind of initiatives that are, including even from our own center. I think we have also been looking at some of these issues. How can we make sure that consensus building becomes a character of this Parliament for the next 3 years that we have ahead of us? In terms of the composition, I know Dr. Ine has spoken about the mechanics of it, but I think in terms of the real people who form part of this committee, I know the committee has been set up already, but I would have thought that maybe the leaders of the two sides would have been very careful in terms of who becomes a member of this committee. I hear some names, which I'm not going to mention, from both sides. And I have a lot of discomfort, with those people being part of this kind of initiative. In the research that we do and in what we have seen in many parliaments, often when you come to issues of consensus building and you want to get people who lead this process, I think you want to make sure that you get people from both sides who are very well respected for their, if you like, very honest and objective position. I will cite maybe many years ago in the sixth Parliament, one honorable member that I used to respect a lot, and we worked, in different committees that the Right Honorable Speaker set up, was Honorable Papa Usu Nkrumah, who is now, I think that's the seat that the Deputy Minister here has taken over. He was someone who was very, very well respected from across. And when the NDC in those days is wrong, I think he would point it out, and he would point it out very, very clearly. And when his side does not get it right, I think he doesn't shy away from saying that. So if you have people like this on a committee that's supposed to build consensus, then you are sure that you can make a lot of headway. So I just want to, advise our leaders that in putting together committees like this that are supposed to build consensus, I think we have to be very, very careful and selective about who sits on that committee, so that the committee can advance the interests of Parliament and not take Parliament back. Now, I want to even dare say, Selom, that because of the character of this committee, this Parliament, I think we need, perhaps, the leaders should think about maybe having this committee as a permanent one, in this 8th Parliament. Because we are going to need a lot of consensus as we go along, in the next 3 years. And we need some cool heads, at least that can always say, okay, let's take the issue to, the committee, and let's come back to our leaders, to our caucuses, and so on. In the Parliament of Finland, for instance, Selom, they have something they call the Committee of the Future. And it's a committee that looks at, of course, they don't have the kind of issues that we have here, but it's a committee that sits down and imagines all the challenges that can face a country without any specific terms of reference, but imagining the future, imagining maybe 10, 15 years from now and so on, and trying to come up with ideas and policy positions that can shape the direction of the country. In this 8th Parliament, I think we need a committee like this that can be in existence for the rest of the 3 years. So I rest my case.
All right, just a quick one. I'm not sure we can do the COVID discussion, but just a quick one. Do you expect the matter to resurface when Speaker Babin comes back?
I hope not. I hope not, because you see, as I was saying earlier, the second deputy speaker was very bold to reverse the decision, a position that the Right Honourable Speaker took. Look, one Parliament is run on 3 things. The Constitution, standing orders, and practice and precedent. So, I just hope that this committee that has been set up would be one that at least whatever they do, everybody in Parliament, including the Right Honourable Speaker, would go with, whatever they come up with. But let me say this, Selon. I think in the process of building consensus, we should not also forget, that important variable. There's a need to build consensus between the two sides, that's the majority and the minority. But also there's a need to build consensus between the two sides as one and the Right Honourable Speaker. Because I have seen instances when, the rulings of this Right Honourable Speaker have been challenged. I have seen more of it in this 8th Parliament, of course, because of the character of the Parliament. And I've also seen instances when even the minority has tried to maybe be angry or disagree with the Right Honourable Speaker. I think as part of the consensus building, as part of getting us move forward, we need to be mindful of that. There's a need to have the cooperation of the two sides, but most importantly also, we need to get the Speaker as part of this conversation. Of course, maybe the Right Honourable Speaker might also have to do some introspection.
Very well.
At least the character of this Parliament is not a normal Parliament.
Very well.
From where he sits, I think, everything that he says, first of all, is weighed maybe from a kind of partisan point of view before people even look at its value as the ruling of a speaker.
Very
so
well.
he needs to keep that in mind.
Thank you. All right, Martin, you have the last word on this, just in a minute. Are we to expect more of these, or you think this committee should be able to have a framework that will work in similar instances in the future when we have such a split house in controversial decision-making?
things in the nature of human beings, we are bound to have more of this, okay? So, but it's also good they've set up the committee. So with time, maybe the committee will also evolve its own operating orders or rules. And perhaps if they can preempt some of the things, that would be good. But in the nature of human beings, there's no way the committee can preempt everything. So there will be instances like what we have, but certainly the committee can step in early. And our advisor usually, when these things come, they should step in early, not like what we've had in this instance. It doesn't look good at all because, you see, we spend so much time and effort trying to debate this matter when they could have engaged themselves, because from day one, it was clear that this was going to give a lot of problems, the e-levy and the JAPA and all that. So we shouldn't have sat down and allowed people to dig in their heels and all that. We've lost a lot of time and effort only now for the committee to do what should have been done right from the beginning, right at the time when the announcement was done, when they went to Ho. That was when they were to negotiate. That was it. But people were trying to show that they can bully their way through, and now you see, they've had their fingers bent. So it's a lesson to all of us.
All right. Okay. So I think we've spoken enough on this, and that's how we end today's edition of The Big Issue. We've been live on radio and TV from our studios here at number 11, Dr. Martin Loop in Adabraka in Accra. My guests have been the Honorable Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, Andrew Ejapa-Mensah, MP for Second Year Deputy Energy Minister, Martin Pebu, private legal practitioner, Dr. Dominic Akurintinga Ayini, former Deputy Attorney General and member for Bolga East, and Dr. Rashid Rahman, Executive Director for the African Center for Parliamentary Affairs. Thank you so much, guests, for being on the show. And listeners and viewers, thank you so much for making time to be with us. We'll come again your way next week with another exciting edition. My name is Selom Adunu. Have a very good afternoon.